Hey everyone, it's me Bo, back once again with another cult movie review. Hope everyone is doing good. Thanks for checking out the review. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the very disturbing 1995 war film Black Sun, the Nanking Massacre. Before we get into it, guys, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. All the support is greatly appreciated. The film is of course based on the tragic real-life events that took place in December 1937. A mass murder of Chinese civilians by the Japanese Imperial Army. Thousands upon thousands of innocent lives were sadistically killed over a 6-week period. Absolute pure torture, and this 1995 film covers it all. I first saw this movie back in 2020, and I must admit, the whole story made me feel very disturbed. Not only was the movie a harrowing ordeal to experience, but it was also upsetting to know that it was all based on real events. The film, written and directed by Mao Tun-Fee, was the 4th installment in the Men Behind the Sun war series. The movie started with this narration explaining the events that led up to the invasion by Japanese forces. The film then began with the army arriving in Nanjing, ready to execute their so-called cleanup operation. The women and children were screaming as the soldiers rounded up all the civilians from door to door. It was a chaotic sight, and the people of Nanjing were rightfully scared for their lives. Some who had the opportunity tried to escape from the Japanese, but their efforts were futile. While all this horror was taking place, one man even had his head chopped off by an army officer. Yeah, it's just the sheer brutality, an innocent guy just looking out of his window gets beheaded. Sickening stuff. The movie never really focused on one central figure. Instead, it had an ensemble cast of characters all experiencing the devastation together. One interesting pair of characters were the father and son duo who initially helped the Japanese forces round up the innocent Chinese civilians. The dad, a charming bilingual speaker, assisted the army in the hope that they would spare him and his son of any enslavement or death. It was a kind of a selfish move, but I think anyone would have tried to do the same thing. I understood why the dad did what he did, and in fairness, once he got involved, he did bring some semblance of order to proceedings. Even though he was trying to save his own skin, he thought that if everyone cooperated, the soldiers would stop the killing. But he couldn't have known what type of monsters he was actually dealing with. So throughout the film, the two came in and out of the story as the brutal onslaught continued. Towards the end, we saw the dad get roped into posing for a photo for the Japanese journalists. The media that were there insisted on capturing an image of one of the soldiers ready to behead a civilian, while the journalists emphasized that this was just a staged photo exercise. To everyone's shock, the bloodthirsty soldier went ahead and actually beheaded the father. Just one of many shocking moments in this film. And in some ways, the build-up to this beheading was somewhat amusing. I found the persistence of the journalists quite entertaining, as they all seemed so determined to capture this one specific image. As it all played out, I could see this all ending very badly, which it did. Also, to add insult to injury, having his son, the small boy, witness the whole thing Just very ugly stuff. One of the most intriguing aspects of the film was the John Rabe character, who was played by actor Ulrich Ottenberger. Rabe, who was a member of the Nazi Party, was stationed in Nanking when the Japanese invaded. He and some other foreign nationals created a safety zone to help the people of Nanking. While he wasn't able to save everyone, he did save many, many lives. To put it bluntly, given the sadistic brutality dished out by the Japanese Imperial Army, Rabe and the Nazi regime were arguably the heroes in this story. You know, that's not to say that what the Nazis did was okay. It wasn't at all. But in this specific scenario, we see them from a different perspective. There was actually a scene that I wanted to bring up where we saw a Chinese girl, a very young woman, being chased by two Japanese soldiers. She was screaming, trying to get away, but eventually she got caught and was about to be brutally assaulted before Rabe stepped in and prevented the attack. There was a remarkable moment when the camera closed in on Rabe's arm, showing him wearing a Nazi armband. He then pointed to the armband, reminding the soldiers of whose side they were on. It was a chilling moment to see the Nazi emblem actually prevent atrocities for a change. Rabe only wore the Nazi armband in an attempt to warn off the perverse Japanese soldiers. Yeah, it was made quite clear in the film that Rabe didn't actually want to wear the Nazi armband. He wasn't some raging, hate-fueled Nazi enjoying the abuse. He was a guy that hated to see these innocent lives being killed in such a brutal way, and ended up being a major thorn in the side of the Japanese Imperial Army. Black Sun, the Nanking Massacre, was indeed a very violent film, and because of its violent nature, the film often gets associated with the whole exploitation genre. Now, I fully understand why, but many of those exploitation films were pretty much nonsense with no real message for its audience. This film, on the other hand, was only exploitative by exposing the brutality unleashed on the innocent people of Nanking. It is important to remember that this movie was indeed faithful to the material it was based on. Yes, this was a dramatization, but it still holds more meaning because the event actually happened. It's exploitation, but it's exploitation based on fact and not fiction. And with all that said, it should also be noted that many exploitation films in the genre, were very low budget projects. That cannot be said for this film, as clearly a lot of talented artists and producers worked hard to create such a haunting piece of cinema. I need to take a moment to praise the film's overall look and aesthetic. While the actions of the characters in the film were disgustingly cruel, the film itself was wonderfully shot, showcasing the efforts of cinematographer Jung Shu-sha. Her and her production team were able to capture this very authentic warlike setting. Burning fires to the demolished buildings, it was all there on screen. This was a well-made movie, and it conjured up a sense of misery for its audience. The film also interspliced real photos and footage from the massacre itself. I must say, I really liked this editing technique as it educated the viewer on how the whole massacre unfolded. It also added another layer of significance, knowing you were seeing the real-life atrocities of war. And so dislikes for Black Sun, the Nanking Massacre, 1995. My biggest dislike for the film would have to be the sheer violence that we saw on display. Now, I know what the filmmakers were attempting here, and arguably it was the necessary step to take, but ultimately the violence does prevent repeat viewing for its audience. I mean, this film does not leave you with joy or anything like that. Instead, it leaves you with a very depressing outlook on humanity. So, with all that, unless you're a crazy person, you're not going to be wanting to rush back and watch this film anytime soon. As I said, I understand what they were going for, but at times, it was almost too violent. And I kind of wish there may have been an edited version for general audiences or something like that. Something a little less violent for maybe a younger audience, because ultimately the Nanking Massacre is a film that everyone should experience. And so ratings for Black Sun, the Nanking Massacre, 1995. I will be rating this movie a solid 7 out of 10. The Nanking Massacre was a very compelling film that didn't hold back in its approach in tackling the harsh subject matter. And, after having some time to think, I really do believe that this is a film that everyone should at least watch once in their lives. Whether you're a fan of war movies or not, the Nanking Massacre is a very important piece of history that should be recognised by generations old and young. I mean, this movie provided a disturbing, real account of what happened back in December of 1937. If you didn't know already, this movie is in Mandarin, but it does come with English subtitles. Now, I know foreign language films aren't for everyone, but honestly, the Nanking Massacre is worth the effort. If any of you guys out there have seen this war drama, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. For those who haven't seen it, once again, go check it out, as it's a significant piece of Hong Kong cinema. And well, that's all from me today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the review. I'll be back next week with another cult movie review. Don't forget to subscribe, and of course, take care.